The Paul Leslie Hour, helping people tell their stories. And now, your host, Paul Leslie.
Hey, it's me. Hello and welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored that you would join me here on the Paul Leslie Hour. If you want to support the mission of the show, you can do so. Just go to patreon.com/the Paul Leslie Hour. I promise you'll have good karma. Here's hoping that you're holding up with all the madness that's going on all around the world. Already I'm feeling a certain amount of normal. I guess as normal as you could get. This is an interview recorded in the hotel room of Tim Krekel. He's a man who has since passed away. A man from Louisville, Kentucky. He was born October 10th, 1950, almost 70 years ago, and he passed away June 24th, 2009. Tim Krekel was a singer, songwriter, guitar player, and a very nice guy. I'll never forget going into his hotel room. We finished the interview. It was several hours before the show, and he asked me if I wanted to stay in his hotel room and watch TV. And I have to tell you, not everyone is like this, but sometimes you do the interview and the attitude is, okay, now get out. He was a very unique recording artist and had a very unique sound. It was a blend of rock, country, some blues, Americana. He also wrote songs that were recorded by other people. Alan Jackson, Gayle, Martina McBride, Patty Loveless. He also toured with Jimmy Buffett. He wrote a song with Jimmy Buffett called Morris's Nightmare on the You Had to Be There album. He wrote with a lot of great artists, everyone from Marshall Chapman, Matraca Berg, Danny O'Keefe, and others. This interview was recorded with a little digital recorder, and that night I got to see him perform. I remember he dedicated a song to me, which was, I thought, very kind. I know that a lot of you listening, you knew Tim Krekel, and I hope that this interview is a source of some kind of comfort or maybe a fond memory that you have. Feel free to let me know what you think.
We're sitting down with Mr. Tim Krekel, but I'll just call him Tim. It's a pleasure to welcome you on my program, and I've been looking forward to this, so thank you very much for making the time to do this.
Sure, Paul. Glad to be here. Glad for you to be here.
Thank you. I wanted to start out by asking you how you discovered music.
Boy, that's a good question. Really, I was a child of the 50s. I was born in 1950. And I had two older sisters, and who were in their early teen years in the 50s, and they started bringing home rock and roll records as soon as they started coming out. So when I was 6, 7 years old, I was hearing Little Richard, and my father even had a jukebox down in the basement that somebody had given him, and it had Blue Suede Shoes on it, and Fats Domino doing Blueberry Hill, and Hank Ballard and the Midnighters. So I was exposed to all that at a very early age. And also there was a lot of bands that played in Louisville. And there's always been a pretty healthy local music scene, even starting back in the 50s. So I was just always attracted to it, just kind of what I always wanted to do after I'd heard it. So that's kind of it.
Was bluegrass ever an influence on you coming from Kentucky?
It became an influence when I was about 19, 20 years old. I had already moved up to New York and played in a little band up there for 5 or 6 months, and then I moved back to Louisville. And I started playing at a place. That's when I started writing songs, and I formed my first band where I was the leader of it and was the chief songwriter, and it was called Dusty. And there was a place on Bardstown Road in Louisville called the Storefront Congregation, and it featured bluegrass music 6 nights a week. And on Sunday night, they let me bring in my little trio to play. And so some young guys who were starting out in bluegrass then would come down to hear us play, and ended up sitting in with us. Sam Bush and Tony Rice, who of course are now well established as, you know, bluegrass greats. But so I got turned on to bluegrass through them and through going down and hearing them play, because they came hear me play, and it was always around. But I remember going to see Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs too at Jeffersontown High School, which is a little high school out right near my house about that same time. So it was kind of popular right about then. I think because maybe the Bonnie and Clyde movie and had that Foggy Mountain Breakdown was in that, and so it was kind of becoming more popular with a lot of people. So that's kind of when I got exposed to it.
Hearing your music, it seems like you're all over the place. You know, you can hear a lot of different styles in your music. Is there one in particular that's a favorite of yours?
No. It's kind of like good music and bad music. I think Duke Ellington said that, or maybe it was Count Basie said that. There's only two kinds of music. I've been exposed to so many different kinds of music, and I've loved them all. I'm really partial, though, to songwriting. Music that's driven by songwriting, by songs. And I think that's due to just the type of music I grew up listening to, the rock and roll. And then, of course, when the Beatles came into it and Bob Dylan, then it kind of, the words became even more important. So I've always liked good music paired with good lyrics. So, you know, that's what I tend to listen to more than anything. But it can be lots of different genres. I mean, it could be, you know, of course, rock, and folk, and, you know, Americana these days, or whatever they call it. You know, I love John Prine, and I love Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell. I love, I love the Beatles. I love the Rolling Stones. I think they're great songwriters. So that's kind of my favorite type of music.
When did you realize that you were going to be a musician?
I think really, I mean, this may sound strange, but I've actually been playing in bands since I was about 11 or 12 years old, since the early 60s. Pre-Beatles, I was actually playing in bands. And then when I heard them and saw it, you know, the music grew so much during the 60s that, and it was so creative, you know, and I just kind of caught the bug, and I never wanted to do anything else.
What is it that you like about music?
What I like about it? Just about everything. I like that it has a profound effect on people. It changes the way they think, the way they feel. You know, it moves people. That's what I love about it. It's a great way to communicate. It's a genuine communication between people, you know, of real emotion and real ideas. You know, it's on every level. So
there's a song of yours that I like a lot called "Glimpse of Paradise."
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping you could tell us about that song.
That song was actually written in a van, or not written in a van, but made up in a van. As I was driving home from Maine, I go up to Maine every year. In fact, I'm going in a couple of weeks. I've got a lot of friends that live up there, and I go up and I take my kids up, and we stay on this little lake up there, and we stay for a week or two, and I play gigs while I'm up there. And it's kind of the way I pay for my vacations, going up there and playing. And but we were leaving. It was very early, like maybe we had to get back to Louisville. Kids had to get back to school or something. So it was a Sunday morning, about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was driving down the road, and there's this one little vista off, I think it's Route 17. And you look out, and you just see this farm and these hills and the mountains in the distance. And I always thought, well, this looks like paradise. And that little phrase came to my head, you know, I just got a glimpse of paradise. And then the song just sort of wrote itself. We'd been to this party up on this mountain that our friends have. And they would have these big parties up there where people would camp out. There's no electricity or anything up there. And you just camp out with bonfires. And there was an apple tree up there, and I remember an apple falling down and almost hitting somebody on the head. Just all these little images kind of came to me, and that's where the song came from. And of course, I started thinking about what paradise would be to me, and it would be a place without war. It would be a place where people weren't concerned with money so much. And love's the only law, So that's where that song came from.
There's another song on your album, The World Keeps Turning, called Turning Away, which was also covered by Crystal Gayle.
Yes, right? It was. Uh-huh.
Tell us about that song.
I wrote that song in the early 80s. I was writing for a publishing company in Nashville called Combine Music. The other writers at Combine were Chris Christopherson, Billy Swan, Tony Joe White, Larry Gatlin, Larry John Wilson, who's a great Georgia songwriter. And anyway, there was a bunch of us who would try to write songs there to get cut commercially. I had a band called the Sluggers at the time, and I wrote the song one day I was really trying to emulate Buddy Holly a little bit when I wrote the song, as far as a very simple, hooky kind of a rock and roll song, the way I originally wrote it. In my band, the Sluggers, we demoed the song, and it was going to come out we had a deal on Monument Records, but that deal fell through. And so somehow or another, actually Al Cooley, the song plugger at Combine, took the song over to Warner Brothers, where Crystal Gayle was. And the story I heard was she just saw the tape sitting on the desk and put it on and listened to it, but she actually found the song herself. And I don't know how true that is. So she ended up recording it, and she recorded it the way that we had demoed it, which is kind of has a rockabilly feel to it. And it went to number one. It was a number one hit for her in 1984, I think it was. And subsequent to that, a British artist named Shakin' Stevens recorded it, and it got into the top 10, I think, in England. Dave Edmunds produced that version of it. And so, it was a good song, and I loved it. And so when I went to make this record, is that
World
Keeps Turning. Okay, I blanked out there for a minute. World Keeps Turning, which is kind of an acoustic. I've been playing a lot of acoustic gigs in the last 6-7 years, going out with just my guitar and playing by myself. And so I wanted to make a record that would kind of reflected that, and I just came up with this little different version arrangement of that song and did it on that.
Do you have a preference as far as playing by yourself or with a band?
I like it both. I really do. For economic reasons, I tend to play more by myself. In the last few years, it's gotten very expensive to take a band out on the road and do much with it. The band that I do have, we play around Louisville. We maybe play three or four times a month at the most. A great band. We have horn section, and the guys are just great players. We have a whole lot of fun playing. It's very creative, and I can get to turn my electric guitar up and let loose doing that. But then I've really grown to appreciate just going out with my guitar and trying to put my songs over, and people can hear the lyrics a little better and hear the song itself. And I've gotten to where it's become. It really started out as a real challenge, being a guitarist. Trying to just play, express my guitar playing by myself without the support of a rhythm section or another guitarist. But it's been a challenge, but I've really grown a lot as a guitarist doing that, and I've really grown to love that, love the sound of just the one guitar and my voice. It's just kind of a whole different dimension now. So.
Out of all the people that have covered your songs, and there's a lot of really great artists like B.J. Thomas, Jerry Reed,
Mm-hmm.
is there any in particular that you find extremely exciting?
Well, probably the most exciting on one level was Ricky Nelson. And the reason was when I was first starting to play, I used to watch him on TV. And, it was one of the first things I was exposed to was seeing him at the end of his show, the Ozzie and Harriet show back in the early 60s. At the end, he would always come on with his band, and his band was a great band. He had James Burton from Louisiana playing guitar, and Joe Osborne on bass, and I think maybe even Hal Blaine playing drums, who all just went on to play on so many records by Elvis and everybody. And it was a great band. And Rick Nelson was actually, I thought he wasn't just an actor singing. He really loved it. He had a great voice, and he was a real expressive singer, made some great records. So, in the early 80s, he recorded 2 songs of mine. He recorded Send Me Somebody to Love, which was on my first album for Capricorn, and In My Heart, which was also on that record. Send Me Somebody came out on a record, I think it's called From Memphis, or it has Memphis in the title, an album of his that was released actually after his death in the plane wreck. And so it was kind of bittersweet that he was gone, but I felt so great that he had recorded and they put out that song. And then I didn't find out till later through another fan of his that he had recorded the other song, In My Heart, but they'd never gotten completed. Mm. And I have a real rough cassette of him just singing it, the basic track, which is pretty cool.
Wow, that sounds interesting.
Yeah. But there's been so many other people, like Delbert McClinton recorded a song of mine that I wrote with Fred Noblock that I thought was just a beautiful version of it, called Blues as Blues Can Get. And Kim Ritchie, who I co-write with, has done 3 or 4 songs that we've written together, and she's just a great singer. And then, of course, Patti Loveless had a #1 hit with the song, and Martina McBride. So, there's been some great versions of my songs. And I'm always excited when somebody does one, It validates what you did a little bit,
We had one artist on our show that talked about you a lot.
Yeah.
And he actually cut one of your songs, and he's a great harmonica player named Greg Fingers Taylor.
Oh, yeah, Fingers. He's my friend, my good friend.
So tell us about the song Over the Fence.
Over the Fence. I wrote that song when my band, the Sluggers, we got a record deal on Arista. We put out an album on Arista in early to mid 80s, which turned out to be wasn't a real pleasant experience. The record kind of got wrestled away from us by the producer and turned into something that we weren't really crazy about. Did a lot of overdubbing and just sound wise, and Arista didn't really. The people at Arista kind of went cold on it. It was just sort of not one of my favorite experiences of recording, but that song was written for that album, and it in fact was the title track of the album. And it's just a kind of a straight ahead rock and roll thing. It's interestingly enough, and this hasn't happened very often, but I kind of woke up in the middle of the night with that whole idea in my head, and I think I got up out of bed and went to the bathroom so I wouldn't wake anybody up, and pretty much wrote the whole song. I went back to sleep. Luckily, I had a little tape recorder I sang it into, and I woke up the next day, and there it was. So,
what did you think of Fingers' version?
I thought it was great, and Fingers liked the song when he heard it, and he was making a record in the late 80s. I guess it was 87 or 88 or something like that. And, we recorded it down at Jimmy Buffett's studio down in Key West. And we wrote a couple of other songs together for the record, but he wanted to put that on it. And I think it's really great. And I love his harmonica playing. He's such a great harmonica player. Yeah.
Tell us about how you met Fingers.
Well, Oh, in 1970, it had to be 76, maybe 77. Well, 76, I think it was, that I played with Billy Swan. You're right. I don't know if you know who he is. He had a record called I Can Help. If you got a problem, I don't care what it is, I can help. I got 2 strong arms, I can help. Anyway, he was a singer-songwriter, a friend of, he played in Chris Christopherson's band. He had a huge hit with the song I Can Help. And after it had already been a hit, he decided he was going to put a band together, and he hired me to go out and play with him. That's the first time I ever went on the road. I was still living in Louisville. And we traveled to Europe and got great reviews in the Village Voice and traveled all over with this record. And that band broke up after a year because he actually wasn't making all that money, much money doing it. You know, we were having a good time. But so he went back to playing with Chris Christopherson as a side man and still writing and stuff. So I had decided that I liked being on the road, and Billy said, well, you know, he was living in Nashville, he said, you want to come down here and stay at my house for a while and you know, get out and meet some people. So I started doing that. I started going down to Nashville and I stayed at his house, and subsequently I got hired to play guitar behind this girl who was on CBS. And they did a showcase in Nashville. And the night of the showcase, Don Light, who was Jimmy Buffett's manager at the time, and Chet Atkins, who was a friend of his, had come out to hear the showcase. And it just so happened that Buffett was looking for a guitar player there. And so Chet Atkins made the recommendation. He said, well, why don't you recommend this guy to play with Buffett? Who evidently liked the way I played, so that was pretty cool. So subsequently, I got called by Buffett's organization, and they flew me down to meet Jimmy and see the band. They flew me down to Sarasota, I think it was. And so stayed at this real nice hotel. I got there like on a Friday night, and the next morning was the day of this big festival they were playing. So they put me on the bus at noon to go out to the festival site. And that's when I first met Fingers. And Fingers was a wild character back in those days. And he always carried around a tape recorder and always, one of those boom boxes. And I always had his blues going, playing, he was an authority on the blues. And so here I was this new guy who they were getting to play guitar, and he had been with Jimmy the longest. He had seniority. He was the guy in the band, and so he immediately starts questioning me. You like the blues, blah blah blah. And I said, yeah. And I said, I like that Freddie King thing that's on there that's playing right now. So okay, all of a sudden, oh, you know who that is, And then we started talking, and we became very close, fast friends after that, real close. And in fact, when I decided to move from Louisville to Nashville, I ended up moving into the same apartment complex where he was living. We had some wild times back in those days. I'm glad we're here to talk about it.
What did you think of the experience of performing with Jimmy Buffett? You toured with him in the 70s for a while. For a year. Mm-hmm. And then didn't you play again later?
Yes, I played in, I think it was 87 and 88, I think is when I loved it. It was great. I'd never been in any kind of experience like that before. I mean, the first tour, all of a sudden we're opening for the Eagles, in these big stadiums down in Florida. And I'd been with Billy Swan. We'd played some cool venues and stuff and traveled around, but it was nothing on this scale. And Jimmy always treated everybody very nice. And I mean, you didn't have to carry your bags, and you stayed in nice places. So I loved all that aspect of it, and had a great band. I loved everybody in the band. Had Kenny Buttrey playing drums, and Fingers, and Jay Spell, this excellent piano player, he ended up going with me and playing on my first album on Capricorn. So it was a great experience, but I was young and I was really ambitious and wanted to make my own records. So after about a year, I got a deal with Capricorn through Don Light, who was Jimmy's manager, who subsequently was replaced. Jimmy's management became Irving Azoff, and but Don took me on as an artist, and I got a deal on Capricorn Records, and so I figured, well, I'm going to go be a big star, and I ended up quitting the Coral Reefer Band back then, which probably was a big mistake. I'm sure I could have stayed with him and made the record and had a good job and would have maybe, who knows what would have happened. But anyway, that's how that went. Yeah.
There's one song that you wrote with Jimmy that I always wondered about. He never plays it, but I always thought it was a pretty, it's a happy little song, but I always thought it was a good song. Morris's Nightmare.
Yeah. Well, it was weird. Like, in fact, right when I think I'd already given him the notice in one of the last gigs, we got together in his room and I played him a couple of ideas for songs, and he liked that one. I think I just had the melody and maybe a little bit of the words, and so we ended up finishing up, and he recorded the song live in Atlanta at the Fox Theater, and I don't think he ever plays it anymore.
It's a good song, though.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us about your new record. You have a new album out.
Yeah, it's called Soul Season. It's been out now. It was actually officially released last September. So it's been going on a year now. It's got some really, really great reviews. Somebody in Philadelphia, it was like on their top 10 list for the year. And it was number one on one of the XM channels. I think it's called Cross Country for a couple of weeks. And sold pretty good amount of records. Obviously, it's not in the top 10 or anything right now, but it's done pretty well for us. And it features my band, which these days I'm calling the Tim Krekel Orchestra. So it looks like TKO, of course. We have a horn section, and it's sort of it leans a little bit on rhythm and blues from the 60s, kind of soul music. It kind of has that vibe to it. That's where the name Soul Season came from. It's got a song on there called Wilson Pickett, which has gotten a lot of attention. And the song is based on a true story. Where I live up in Louisville, there's a cemetery right behind my house called Evergreen Cemetery. And when Wilson Pickett died, I think 2 years ago, January, I read in the paper that he's going to be buried back there. His mother's buried there and had family in Louisville, which up until then I didn't know. So the day of the funeral was a Saturday afternoon. I walked over there, and sure enough, Little Richard was over there, and there was all these black limousines. And so anyway, I ended up writing a song about that particular thing. And the hook is they buried Wilson Pickett in my backyard. And so, it's got a lot of the old R&B, maybe Stax, Memphis feel to it. But it's not really retro though. And Marshall Chapman and I have a song on there, I Love Everybody. I went back and redid a song that I'd recorded in the 80s, called I Can't Help Myself. And it's a good record. I think it's really well recorded.
Do you have a favorite song on the album?
Boy, I like a lot of them. I love the Wilson Pickett song, and it seems like that strikes a chord with a lot of people. There's a song on there called I Won't Leave You Alone that I wrote kind of, it was sort of inspired by a little thing that my daughter had said. And but I think it's got a really, it's a fun To me, it sounds like something that would have been on the radio maybe 20 years ago or something. And it's got a real nice horn part in it and everything. I like that a lot. I love the song Marshall and I wrote, I Love Everybody. It's a great song. I just like the sentiment of that song. I love everybody, I love everything.
I think Marshall Chapman is one of the finest writers out there.
I do too, and I'm really proud. I'm getting to play with her a whole lot. We're very good friends. In fact, as you know, we're playing tonight over at the Swallow at the Hollow over here in Roswell, Georgia. Her and Tommy Womack, who's another great writer.
Yeah.
You know, if you're familiar with Tommy's writing.
I saw him at Eddie's Attic one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a clever guy.
He's a very clever guy. Funny guy. I like Tommy a lot.
Did you meet Marshall Chapman through the Coral Reefer Band? Or?
Well, I'd actually met her before. You know, we were both living in Nashville in the 80s, and she had her rock and roll band, and I had mine. And in fact, two of the guys that had played with her ended up coming over and playing with me and becoming the Sluggers with me, Willis Bailey and Tom Comet. They were her band when she did an album called Jaded Virgin. But where we really started becoming friends was, I think it was in 1987. I went out on the road. Buffett had asked me to come back out and play guitar again with him because the guitarist he had was leaving. And it was obvious that I hadn't become a big star, so he asked me to come out. It's a sad man, which I was very happy to do. And but he also hired Marshall Chapman to come out on a particular tour. In fact, that tour had so many great people out for that summer. You had Steve Cropper also came out and played guitar. The Memphis Horns, Sam Andrews, and Wayne Jackson. And, it was just a great band. But Marshall and I, we kind of got to know each other a little better then. We weren't competing with each other then. We let our guards down, became good friends. We've been very close friends ever since then. We write a lot together. And, you know, just enjoy each other's company a lot.
Having been in the Coral Reefer Band back then and then coming back like probably 10
About 10 years later, just about.
Did it seem very different, or did it have an element of the same?
It had elements of the same, but boy, the organization had really picked up. I mean, and really, it was very professional. The hotels were a little bit nicer, and it was always a private plane to ride around on. And we went to Australia twice. We got to go over there and played New Zealand and Hawaii, and you know. Obviously, he had made a little progress in that 10 years. And it was great. Great band, great bunch of people to play with. I mean, all that stuff was exactly the same. The music was, you know, the musicianship and everything. The show had become more of a show, though, which it has continued to evolve into. I think there's more of a show aspect to it. And it seems like when I played with him the first time, it was a smaller band, and it was just had more of a band feel to it, you know, which as a musician we all love, but maybe as, you know, as somebody observing from outside, it may not have been quite as interesting as it is now.
Working the way back to some of your solo stuff, you mentioned some of your favorites from the new album. Overall, this is always a hard question for musicians, I've noticed. Overall, is there one song that means the most to you?
No. Usually it's something I've written, you know, recently, but I'm in a little bit of a dry spell right now, which that happens, it comes and goes. But as far as, I don't really think I have a favorite. There are favorites and songs that have kind of stayed with me through the years, you know. From the first album I did, I still love the song Send Me Somebody. In My Heart are both, I think, real nice. Good love songs, real good songs. But, I mean, I don't know, that's too many. I've written a lot of songs.
If somebody goes out and hears you play, or when somebody listens to one of your records, What is it that you hope that the listener gets out of that experience?
Oh, just to maybe feel what I felt when I wrote the song. Maybe, just, when I write, I try, there's a certain amount of cleverness in writing, but there's also, I think I try to put a lot of emphasis on just the heart, the emotion, what you're trying to feel, from what you're saying in the song. And I just hope that it connects with people on that level.
What about when you're not doing music? What is it that you like to do?
Well, lately I've been doing so much music. There hasn't been a lot of time because, I just really stepped up playing a whole lot. If you go on my website, I've been playing 3, 4, sometimes 5 nights a week over the last few months. But other than that, just pretty much simple things. I have a young daughter who's 13, so I spend a lot of time with her. I have an older daughter who's 21. I have 2 sons who are already grown and out on their own. My oldest son has a band that plays around the southeast a lot called the Mad Tea Party.
Oh, I've played them on my show.
Oh, hey, well, that's my son, Jason Krekel. Yeah.
Wow, they came through Athens, Georgia.
Sure.
And I was going to go see the show, and I didn't get the chance.
Well, don't miss them next time. They're worth a look at. It's him and his wife Amy, and they're just really a lot of fun, a lot of energy. It's a great band.
What a small world.
Yeah. And then my younger son, Nathan, lives out in San Francisco, and he's involved with like hip hop and stuff. He's really a great wordsmith, man. He's really, really good. Plus, he's a great artist. So he's working on like graphic novels and all this kind of stuff. But he grew up they both spent the last part of their lives over in North Carolina, Asheville. That are associated with that community a lot.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, and I have 2 final questions.
All right.
The first one is, what is your all-time favorite meal?
Wow, my all-time favorite meal. Well, I tell you what, I have, and it's guys have kind of backed off on it in the last years, but I've always been a great fan of the potato.
Yeah?
Yeah, I love potatoes. Maybe my mother was Irish, so maybe that's what it is. But my girlfriend Debbie makes the best fried potatoes in the world. They're in a nice black iron skillet, with onions and an ingredient called soul seasoning. Another place where that came from. And I can make a meal off of something like that. I like. I'm a big fan of like fried chicken. I like good Southern cooking. Yeah. Down home cooking is what I like.
There's a way I like to have potatoes, not to get too off topic, but baked and then with sour cream, garlic, and a little dash of Worcestershire sauce.
Well, I'll try that. I like a twice baked potato too. Have you ever
had that?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Now for the final question. Thanks to the power of technology, this broadcast is going out all over the world.
Great. Hello, everybody.
So I'd like to ask you, what would you like to say to the world? What would you like to say to all those people that are listening in?
Wow, that's a big thing. Well, let me just say this. Just love one another, Accept each other for who you are. And because, boy, that's what the world needs right now. Stop all this fighting. You hear me? Stop it. Get along. We're all alike, really. Underneath, we're all alike.
That's the truth.
We're all people. We all have families. And we all want the same thing. So that's my wish for the world.
Well, Tim Krekel, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Paul. Pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Paul. Enjoyed it.
My pleasure.
Boo-bop-a-ree, boo-bop-a-shy, a-kee-na-pa-tee-la-la, ka-see-ka-ba-boo, dig-it-con, dig-it-ba-ta-go-leggy, ah-yeah, na-ka-shee-da-ba-ga, the-subtly walk-a-chee-ga-long, take on some cap-top-doodly-ba-dee-ka-ba-tee-chee-chee-ka-mong, goodbye.